So hey guys, I'm Landon Bartley. I'm the president of the West Michigan Cannabis Guild, a nonprofit advocacy group in town, but we also have a lot of fun events, basically looking out for the cannabis industry in West Michigan. Not only the industry, but if you want to get involved in the industry or eventually get there, or just have questions, or just also an advocate yourself, the Guild is the place to be. Our information is the best places on our website, wmcannabis.org. We cover all of West Michigan, well, a lot of West Michigan, about 17 counties, and are always having fun events. We have bi-monthly member meetings. We often have social events, business networking events, a lot of member events, private and not so private events that you're welcome to come to. It's $25 a year for an individual. It's free for college students, free for industry employees. If your company is an industry partner, they should look at that too. So wmcannabis.org. Thanks for listening.
It's a mess in this attic, lot going on, but there ain't no need to panic. Come on up and join, we getting wild, getting manic. Spitting truth for all you fanatics. Every week got something new to say. Ain't no filter, this shit coming straight from the brain. It's coming straight from the brain. Yeah, it's coming straight from the brain.
All right, folks, I'm here with Landon Bartley.
Yes.
What's up, Landon? Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great attic.
Yeah, thank you. This is it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
A lot of pot along the way.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
So Landon, you are the board president of the West Michigan Cannabis Guild.
Yes, I am. Yes.
First off, I thought guilds were reserved for medieval times. So
the Michigan Brewers Guild would disagree with you too.
True.
Guild is, yeah, we've joked about that actually. We said, should we have some sort of medieval theme going on? And I can't speak for the folks that founded the thing a few years ago, but we decided to stick with it. We like it. It's unique, and I think it sort of meets the intent of what we do, which is sort of create a community around cannabis.
Yeah.
Bunch of different, maybe not apprentices these days, but people who are in the industry or want to get into the industry. That's what we do.
So it's I don't want to discount what the breadth of it is,
Yeah.
but to some degree, it's like a chamber of commerce specific to the cannabis industry. Is that one part of it?
I think that's the direction we're kind of headed. It was started as a political organization, a political advocacy, or I guess a PAC, a political action committee. And then it's sort of morphed over the past few years. We still have the PAC. We still are very strong in political advocacy. That's a sort of core activity.
Yeah. But
we've also been talking to our members. With the pandemic, we had a bit of an opportunity to say, hey, do we remake this thing? And so we've been talking to the members about it and prospective members.
Yeah.
And have been hearing a lot of good feedback and people saying, yeah, there is a cannabis community in West Michigan, but it's disorganized. The guild could play a really important role in that sense.
So explain the difference. So what it's made up of affiliates and members. Is that accurate, or what makes up the group? I guess.
The group is mostly individual members. We do have business members. We call them industry partners that are licensed cannabis companies. Actually, some non-cannabis companies as well. We have a bank. We have folks interested from insurance or other advocacy groups. It's sort of a big tent. Whoever's the common thread is that everyone cares about cannabis. It to some extent is tired of the misinformation that's out there and disinformation, and wants to be active and wants to just get together with other people that are, understand that cannabis is not a terrible thing, and it's good, it's cool and it's fun, and there's a lot of community around it. So we have that's kind of changed too. We have the individual members, we have industry partners, but also industry partners have industry employees.
Yeah.
So with like industry partnership, they get 25 employee memberships free. So
nice.
We have a lot of employees from, especially in town, in Grand Rapids. And then we're starting actually right now, like the next couple of days, we're opening student membership.
Okay.
We're not really, I wouldn't say we're active trying to recruit students, especially like under 18, or
you're not the middle
under 21.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey, there are college kids out here who are, there are some very successful programs getting started in Michigan and elsewhere.
Like agriculture side,
or business, or like testing of cannabis up at Lake Superior State comes to mind. cannabis science,
Yeah.
and a lot of younger people in college or even younger are recognizing the value of learning about cannabis, learning real information about cannabis,
Yeah.
in at the college level, the community college level. And so we want to respect that and say, hey, we have an opportunity for you too.
Right.
Come out and get to know the industry in the area, and things will go much better, hopefully,
Yeah.
for job prospects and such after graduation.
Yeah, it's great. I like the brewery. You mentioned the brewing guild earlier, but
Yeah.
the brewery industry it kind of experienced a similar boom.
Sure.
Although that didn't experience a legalization like this. So
Well, not for 100 years, but
yeah, right. So when someone joins as a member,
yeah,
what just a standard, like if I just want to join.
yeah.
So what does that afford me, or what kind of access do I get, or what would I do?
I think it's the best deal in town. I mean, it's $25 for a year. I think that's going to have to go up, just because we're trying to really be, well, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Basically, as a member, you get connected. So we have meetings some meetings are members only, some aren't. You get access to a Facebook group. You get access to member meetings that we have bi-monthly at different breweries around town.
Yeah.
Um, we're starting to do meetups in further out places. We're West Michigan Cannabis Guild, not Grand Rapids Cannabis Guild.
Yeah. So what does that entail? That goes all the way to Kalamazoo, St. Joe's, all the way down through there?
Yeah. Say North End is probably around Big Rapids.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's set in stone, but we try to sort of limit. I mean, we cover 17 counties, right? So
yeah. You got to have some scope. You have
I
to
gotta
have some scope.
So
definition.
Big Rapids down to the state line, and then about Ionia out to the lake.
Oh yeah.
So
nice.
it's a big area. We've had people say, hey, why not Traverse City? Why not Kalkaska? It's like, yeah, we're not going to turn anyone away, but we got to focus our efforts. And that's sort of based politically. Honestly, we looked at district lines and said, we're going to support, or at least get involved in political races, understanding campaigns, opt-in campaigns or opt-out campaigns,
Yeah.
within this area. Let's at least be cognizant of who our elected officials are,
Right.
and because we're going to be supporting them or not.
So obviously, the guild politically, there had to be a huge uphill battle leading into legalization, or decriminalization first and legalization. And then now, is there still a fight politically to re-ban it? Or is it just more of like who's really for it and who's kind of just neutral on it?
I do think that the political fight has certainly changed. Like you said, decrim back in 2012 here in Grand Rapids, a lot of the folks who were directly responsible for the decrim campaign were the ones who, in fact, founded the guild. And led and pushed for legalization statewide. It was a big mover and shaker in the 2018 campaign. But the struggle has changed. I wouldn't say there's an effort to reban. I think there's an effort on our part, at least, to get good candidates elected that understand cannabis, understand it's just another industry. Yeah, it has some special sort of circumstances, but a lot of times those circumstances are based on the rules and that the government is creating. Right. And it's sort of like, oh, this is special because we're calling it special. Sure, you're creating a plant that has impacts, and everyone recognizes that, but I don't think it's a reban as much as let's make sure that rules don't get worse. See if we can make the regulatory landscape a little more consistent, a little more viable. Look at some of these policies that are maybe making it intentionally or not. I should say unintentionally or not.
Yeah.
But make it harder to get into the industry or to stay in the industry. There's a lot of false narratives out there, and so I guess as an advocacy group, we do, work with politicians and on campaigns, but just trying to get good information out there too.
Yeah. So I mean, we're going uphill against like the prohibition.
Yeah.
It's the horror stories that are just made up. This idea that like it's the devil's lettuce and all that. Like I still call it that because I think it's hilarious. Yeah. But
great salads.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the best salads. Yeah. What are some of the misinformation things out there that like you guys tackle the most, or that you kind of face the most?
Yeah. I think, there are so many. Less. I would say it's less about the product itself and more about the industry. We often will talk about with candidates or at meetings. Hey guys, the question here isn't, are you going to allow cannabis in your community? Like, it's here.
Yeah.
Right. Are you going to allow the licensed industry in your community? And that's the question. And I think that doesn't really come up too much. A lot of times the elected officials' constituents are coming up with concerns. They're saying, I'm worried about my kids having access or getting more access as this industry becomes more widespread. to which we can say, look, it's 21 plus, or if your kid is under 21 and has a significant medical issue that might be able to be addressed with cannabis,
Yeah.
maybe consider it, and talk to a doctor about it. And there are doctors out all over the place that are willing to talk about cannabis as a legitimate excuse me.
Yeah.
There are
Legitimate
doctors
medicine. Yeah.
all over the place that are okay and consider cannabis legitimate medicine.
Yeah, the biggest. This is probably like a little trite, but the biggest knock on the whole like Schedule 1 thing is that the whole point of being in Schedule 1 is that it has no medicinal value.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, this marijuana has been being sold as a medicinal for decades.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And yet it's still on Schedule 1. So there's obviously some politics behind all that.
There's a lot of politics, and I think a lot of elected officials too. It doesn't really matter what the issue is, and maybe I'm mildly jaded from working in government for many years, but politicians are trying to get elected, stay elected, and they won't necessarily talk back to a constituent who's feeding them disinformation as long as they're going, oh yeah, this person's on my side.
They're going to vote for me. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's like, are we stopping cannabis from being sold in our communities? What are we really doing? Is it? And we'll say this is about allowing the industry in your community, not cannabis, about allowing tested, safe products in your community,
Right.
And starting to work sort of. I wouldn't say that we're anti-black market necessarily, but we're not pro-black market. We're really more pro-licensed industry, trying to help people get into it. Over time, the illicit market is going to decrease.
Yeah, that's the thing. When things become up and up on the front, then the black market there's no profit there anymore.
But there is still.
Yeah, to some degree.
And I would say in part because of the regulations and because of the significant costs involved in getting into the industry. With the state legislation a few years ago, the MMFLA, basically the medical industry bill, Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, that was passed by a legislature that you could tell what their priority was, because they had things like minimum capitalization requirements, where you want to open a provisioning center, you have to have $500,000 in cash, ready to go. And you can say, well, does it really going to cost that much?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? Or if you want to open a grower, you're going to have so much in cash. You're also going to have an annual fee to the state of, some of these growers are paying $60,000 per license, and they'll have 10 licenses. That's a big grow, and that's not really our bread and butter. We're really trying. We work with big growers and small growers, but we're really sort of focused on, hey, let's help people get in the industry and stay in it, regardless of your size.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. We do hear some concerns. Recently, we've been hearing some concerns about high THC products. We take those seriously. And
like you're talking about like concentrates and things of that nature, RSOs.
Well, yes and no. Let's say you see flour at the store that says, the consumer is often going. I think it's a growing pain for the industry, and some consumers tend to look at it and go, well, I want higher THC product no matter what. I personally I feel like it's somewhat similar to alcohol content in a whiskey or something. You go, oh, hey, 100 proof. Great. That's going to be some strong stuff, but I'm not going to go out and drink Everclear. So I'm not going to go out and find, 80% THC just because I think it's going to be more messed up. Maybe that's not the end all be all of this plant. There are a lot of other things. And if you're just focusing on THC just to get the bigger, better high, that doesn't seem to be necessarily playing out.
Yeah.
I do hear some flack about that from the industry saying, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you speaking out against this? Our customers want high THC. But I think that, we're seeing some studies that I still want to vet them, make sure they're true. But it's like, if a very high THC product is going to lead to potentially harmful effects on the user, we want to know about that. And a lot of folks in the industry that I know are also going, we don't want to be causing people problems. Cannabis is a great thing. Let's not make it a bad thing.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, and there's so much more value on it. Like, we're regular users. I have been for years. Yeah, but
you should join the guild.
I'm definitely going to join the guild.
All right.
Yeah, we'll do it as an addict, as the addict. But yeah, I think it's not about just getting fucked up.
Yeah,
it really isn't. There's a way to do that, and it probably isn't through weed. Like not to mention in my experience, the highest THC products aren't necessarily the ones that make me most give me the most psychoactive byproduct either. I feel like it's some ratio of all the other cannabinoids that are in there.
Yeah, you talk about the entourage effect, right? What are all these differences, the sort of combination of terpenes and cannabinoids in the plant, and certain combinations might have different effects beyond THC. There's so many cannabinoids in this plant, like 100, or 120, I can't remember the number, but there are many.
Yeah, and many of them are medicinal too, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I have gout, right? Sort of type of arthritis.
That's the disease of kings, by the way.
The disease of kings.
And you're in a guild, so
that's right.
It's kind of coming full circle.
It was meant to be. And I don't have too many symptoms right now. It comes in cycles, but when I do, I find that CBD helps with pain. THC seems to either affect it enough that I can't quite tell, and I don't want to ascribe.
He's not a doctor, but this is just your own personal experience. Yeah.
Thank you. My anecdotal experience is that the THC actually helps, but it doesn't like, I'm not trying to take 30% THC, 5 or 10 or 15 might be just fine.
Right.
And it might just be that I'm high enough that I don't care.
Yeah, there's a psychological
might be some of that too.
Yeah.
But I found that it doesn't leave my head as cloudy the next day as my doctor prescribed medicine, which I still have and still use.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot of potential benefits that I think we're just starting to really learn about scientifically, which is why increasing sort of recognition of the plant's value by elected officials is really exciting to me. I mean, we're seeing legislation come through. It seems like someone's introducing a bill every month to try to legalize federally, and it gets shot down.
Yeah.
The Safe Banking Act is getting some legs again. Although I think it could do more for social equity. But
of course,
it's cannabis is moving in the right direction, and more states are legalizing. We just saw North Dakota today got their signatures approved, so they're going to be on the ballot in November. South Dakota's back on the ballot after their politics. Mississippi, Alabama. I should be careful. I know Alabama, was just. I need to track this stuff more often, but I really focus on Michigan. But it's we have like 38, 40 states that are already on board. And most states will allow medical use, or at least decriminalize possession. It's like there's a reason for that,
It's such a fun time to be. I mean,
what a time to be alive.
Were you smoking when you were young when it was illegal?
Not too much, honestly. I certainly enjoyed it for many years.
Yeah.
I would say I do more now.
Yeah.
And that was mostly because I was concerned. I had been fed all the information. I was a D.A.R.E kid, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to touch this stuff, or getting anyone who is a terrible person. That was like, I don't know if I was double digits at that point, but I was like, oh wait, hold on, I don't need to listen to this stuff necessarily.
Yeah.
This may not all be accurate. I know stoners who are really cool. I shouldn't say when I was 10, but in high school and stuff, it's like, yeah, this is happening, and these people are not the devil, regardless of what lettuce they're eating.
Not to mention, like, I'm a reformed. I wouldn't say a recovering alcoholic, but I drank heavily for a while, like in a party mode. Wasn't a daily drinker, but like I completely cut it off cold turkey, and my marijuana use has increased since then.
Sure.
But it's just better at least for me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you don't wake up feeling guilty and groggy and on edge, like you do if you drank too much the night before. So like if you're still kind of on the fence, give it a shot. Go down to your local dispensary and grab a gummy to start or something.
Absolutely. You can give it a shot. And it's like I think that's the thing too, is that a lot of people are scared because there's been so much misinformation in the past. And I think that we're seeing license types that are coming that are going to really help with that and help people make informed decisions, determine if this is something they enjoy or don't.
Yeah.
Hey, if you don't enjoy it, no one's out there forcing you to smoke or take an edible. Just don't buy. So people can go out, and we're excited about these new license types because I was saying, like, you want to make an informed decision, and whether or not you like it or don't like it, that's fine. But we're looking at, for example, the state has a license called Designated Consumption Lounge, right?
Oh, that was one of my questions I want to ask you about. What the status is of that process of that.
I'm aware of 2 that are licensed in the state. We're gonna check one out in Kalkaska next month on a field trip. I'll tell you about that in a sec. But
so this is a marijuana bar, folks. Basically,
marijuana bar. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of restrictions. You can't go actually buy from that establishment.
It's BYOW.
Right. You have to. You can go next door. I think the one in Kalkaska has a dispensary next door. Probably, I think it's owned by the same people. And that we found, like when I was a city planner, we went out to Denver, looked at that. The only lounge that we were aware of in North America at the time checked it out, and they said, yeah, this is a business model that's not going to work unless you also have um, a store as well to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
But I think that, these are all sort of growing pains, and it's just the way that the industry rolls out. We're trying to make an industry newly legal, and here's a new license type. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I'm very optimistic about lounges because I think that they'll give people a sort of a safe space to try things. I'll talk to folks who went, oh man, I feel like everyone always has their first edible experience. And that's like their, oh man, the first time I had edible, I didn't know it was happening 2 hours in. So I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, because they took 20 milligrams or something because some friend gave it to them.
By the way, that little cookie I just gave you, it has 25 or 30. So
okay,
watch out when you
I'm
pop
excited
that.
for that. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I talk to people and they're like, have you ever had anything? No, I don't know what dose I should try. Doctors aren't going to tell me what dose I should try. I say, well, try with like 5 mgs, maybe 2.5. Nothing big, a little edible. You can find them at most stores, or talk to the bud tender. And maybe the bud tender is going to try to upsell you. In my experience, most bud tenders will be like, hey man, it's cool, whatever you want to do.
Stoners are cool people. That's
stoners are cool. They're
not
chill.
they're not trying to fuck you up.
They're just hanging out and like, yeah, man, I'm glad that you love this stuff.
Yeah.
So you try 2.5 or 5 mgs and see how it goes. If you're first time out, don't eat more if you don't feel like it's working. Wait a couple hours and then try another one. If you feel like it didn't do anything. But I mean, my first time I tried way too much, I should say. I had 50. Because I was worried about flying across state lines. It was a late night flight.
You didn't want to, you had to get rid of it somehow.
Oh man, yeah. I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? So I popped 5 all at once. Felt myself like fall into the jetway on the way into the plane. I was like, oh shit, something's going on. Turned to my girlfriend. I'm like, why are we flying in circles? She's like, dude, look outside. I look outside. We haven't taken off. So like, I mean, everyone has a story like that.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, do you remember your first time?
I mean,
having an edible.
I think
smoking.
the first time I ever. First off, the first time I ever smoked out of a water bong was in college.
Yeah.
And I was with a bunch of experienced potheads.
Yeah.
And it's my turn in the circle, By the way, like marijuana, one of the most fun parts of it is the ritualistic element of it, And so they pack a bowl and they're all excited. I get the greens, the fresh bowl.
Right.
And I put my mouth like over the over the bong, like so.
Party foul.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And then they corrected me, so I light it.
Don't do that.
I immediately don't do that. I immediately like took a huge hit. I coughed super hard right into the bong. So the and someone was like, "All right, get this amateur out of here," So that was my kind of first experience. But
it's okay.
Yeah,
but everyone laughed about it, right? You didn't get kicked out of the circle.
No, of course not. I became a fixture of that circle,
Right.
But I know some people that took way too much and got super paranoid.
Yeah.
I know a guy that he's like a high level executive at an auto company, and so he's also in the legal part of it. So he was kind of nervous. He took like half of a 75 milligram thing, and he's never done it before. Oof. And he ended up going to Henry Ford Hospital.
Oh man!
And the guy they put him on an IV, and the doctor told him like, "Look, man, you're just dehydrated. If you ever feel like this again, drink a bunch of water. But all I'm really gonna tell you is you're out of here. Like enjoy the ride." Mm-hmm. That was kind of that's what the doctor told him. So it can happen, but folks, the stories of people getting too drunk are vast compared to what's going on with the weed part.
Yeah.
I think Bill Murray, I just saw a quote yesterday online. It's attributed to Bill Murray online, but I've seen quotes attributed about the internet to Abraham Lincoln online too. But he said that, it's interesting that the most dangerous part of marijuana is getting caught with it.
You're right.
And now luckily we don't have to deal with that so much in Michigan.
Yeah.
But we know the Brittany Griner story that's making big headlines. And that's an international issue. It's far outside the scope of West Michigan Cannabis Guild. Yeah. And there's all sorts of other politics mixed into that. But at the same time, there are still people here that are in jail for cannabis.
You said at least we don't have to worry about that in Michigan. I'm not sure I completely agree, because you still got to watch out. There's still a limit of what you can carry. You still don't want to be driving with it. You don't want to be driving after you've consumed.
Yeah.
We're still seeing. There was a eye-opening ACLU report. I want to say it was from early 2021. Mm-hmm. That said, let's look at the arrest rates for possession of marijuana across the country. They were in legal states too. They're saying the high, and they were specifically started seeing some really disturbing trends about black versus white,
of course,
people of color. And they're saying, hey, if you're a black person, you're 3.5 times more likely to get pulled over or arrested for possession of cannabis in Colorado, than you're white. In Montana, it's like 10 times. Kentucky, 10.5 times. It's like, okay, so there are some pretty significant problems that we see with, systemic racism all over the place, but it's still persisting even in states that are legal. So
Yeah.
I always sort of
Temper that. Yeah. Temper
temper
that.
it and say, hey, still exercise caution, still, be careful if you don't own your house. If you don't want to get evicted from your house if your landlord doesn't like weed and you didn't know it.
Yeah.
There are still so many opportunities to get screwed up with a on your record and stuff. One thing that I've been really frustrated actually about in Grand Rapids is this ordinance that was passed late 2020. A couple ordinances were passed that were
They kind of snuck him under the.
they didn't really
under.
sneak them in. Well, yeah, they did. The Clean Air in Public Places ordinance had I think some really good sort of intents from the start. They wanted to protect people from secondhand smoke in parks, etc.
Yep.
And the entire community engagement part was based on, hey, do you want to restrict tobacco smoke in parks? And then at the last minute, it became marijuana as well, and also edibles. Oh, so no consumption in public places of any kind of cannabis. And I'm like, what are edibles doing in a clean air ordinance? I like clean air as much as everyone does, but I'm like, this is not the right way to regulate this
No.
this compound
Yeah.
or this plant, and we're just creating more opportunities for someone to get jammed up by, legally or not. Even if they say, oh, it's just an infraction, fine. But you know what? In the MMFLA says if you have an infraction for a controlled substance, a Schedule 1 drug, in the last 10 years, even a local infraction, you can't get licensed under this Medical Facilities Licensing Act. And so I'm saying this to the city commission, hey, you guys are trying to this social equity program at the same time that you're causing this, you're bringing on more potential reasons for people not to get in the industry.
And it's a lopsided chance of enforcement if you're a person of color.
Absolutely.
So the long-term effect of that, or in the near term as well, is that you're not going to have any minority-owned pot shops.
Right.
Not to mention from a socioeconomic perspective, it's already going to be hard enough to do for anyone, let alone someone that's been disadvantaged is going to have a hard time coming up with $500K or whatever it costs. And, it's like.
Well, and so I recently talked to a reporter that was asking about, like, what are social equity policies? What are good ones going to do? And I was thinking, I don't think you need to put the social equity policy on the cannabis industry as much as the banking industry and insurance and all the other systems. Law enforcement. I mean, yeah, I that's a broad topic. But like it's definitely something you want to consider.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if we can change the behavior of people in those industries and the rules and how you approach different people trying to get into an industry, maybe we can make things better instead of worse.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's a complex thing.
It's very complex.
I can understand why it's not super simple to explain what the guild does. It's like,
and we're just talking about politics. The social events and networking events are, I think, a very increasing part of the guild and what the guild does. I mentioned the Kalkushka is the cannabis lounge.
Great name.
So we're going up, I want to say September 17th.
All right, I'm going to pause real quick. Hey, what's up, guys? I know Landon talks about this being in mid to late September, this Kalkushka event. But I've since communicated with him. They delayed that event. We'll talk about this field trip to Kalkushka a few more times throughout the episode. It's not going to be September 17th. Keep checking back to wmcannabis.org to find out more. You can also follow them on the social medias. All the links are in the show notes. Kalkushka will not be September 17th, but it will be coming up soon. Jessica and I are considering joining that event when it does happen. Stay tuned for more information. Back to Landon.
Smokin' Safari. SmokingSafari.com. It's Smokin' Safari Saturday. And we're going to take a bus from GR, so you don't have to worry about driving. And a lot of people have been asking, hey,
can you smoke on the bus?
No smoke on the bus. But you can smoke beforehand. You can pop
eat
an edible.
Eat edibles in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we said to the bus company, absolutely not. We're not going to allow it. Don't worry about it. And they believe us. And our members are cool. And like, we're going to have non-members on the bus too. But we trust them. And like you're saying, stoners are cool. And even if people just want to go, you don't have to be high, you don't have to consume on this thing. We're just going to make it easier so that you can go enjoy this lounge and then come back without not worrying about killing yourself.
Are there still seats on the bus?
There are a few seats.
Okay.
I would say we do expect it to sell out. I think registration's gonna end the 14th, so we still have a couple weeks. In fact, I would say we still have several seats on the bus, many seats available, in fact, right now. But that's only because we just opened registration today.
Yeah, I think that'll be
So,
successful. Yeah.
oh, it's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
SmokingSafari.com.
So what are you going to check out up there? Just kind of how the model's running and talk to the owners, or what's other than just kind of checking it out?
Yeah, I mean, people I think want to know, what does this thing look like? And oh, there's one 2 hours away, and there's one in Detroit area. Um, and that's in large part because many communities haven't opted in to allow them. Grand Rapids has talked about it in that Clean Air and Public Places ordinance that I mentioned. They have a specific section saying we'll have an exemption for designated consumption establishments if those ever are legalized.
At least they put a little earmark in there.
But that was a push, you know. And they also exempted golf courses because not because of cannabis though, but only tobacco smoking. So if you want to smoke a cigar in your golf cart, that's okay.
Way more offensive. Not to mention I've been smoking pot on golf courses for 20 years. Stop me, people.
We're also going to have a golf outing on October 1st. We're calling it Green Means Go because it's our endorsee reception. So one of the political things we do is endorse candidates, contribute to their campaigns. We did several so far this year. We're going to have several more endorsements coming up. We'll announce at our next member meeting on September 21st.
Nice.
I'll talk about that too. But
yeah,
the golf outing is going to be fun. We're going to do it at the Mines, actually, outside of Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I love the Mines.
We wanted to do it at the city course down at 28th and Kalamazoo, but we couldn't get the clubhouse for that until November. So we still wanted to have it in October.
November. So, that's a rough opening at a golf course.
I don't know about golfing then, but I'm not much of a golfer, so we'll see. But our endorsees are going to be there, and we're going to have some sort of area VIPs, and I think it's going to be a pretty cool event. So we do a lot of fun stuff like that. We do the field trip, the golf outing. We do member events, or the member meetings, which are typically at breweries, mostly because that's adults only.
Yeah.
And people like it, and we have a good relationship with breweries. There's not competition necessarily. If people want to smoke weed, they're going to smoke weed. If they want to drink beer, they're going to drink beer. And it's like these industries can coexist peacefully, happily together.
Yeah.
All the staff at every brewery were always like, "Hey, you guys have any extras?" Because
it's the same person. Yeah.
We have some gifting sometimes that takes place, and so those are a lot of fun. We do networking events, more business focused events. Like we have a speaker series called Cannabis Thought Leaders. It's every quarter. That also moves around different typically breweries and typically speakers talking about like a certain focus topic. Last time we talked about small business. The first time we were talking larger businesses that were sort of grower retailers. Next one on October 25th. That's going to be more like, hey, the industry is not having the best time in Michigan right now. Let's talk about that and talk about these tough choices you're making in the industry and why, and how do you sort of stay afloat.
So help me understand this, because the person that told me this could be reliable, but it was just a random person at a dispensary or something. But they told me that when because Michigan was kind of like in the second or third wave of states that were legalizing behind Colorado and California and Washington, and because of what they saw there, and that the big brewing company type vibes are buying a lot of basically those other states were really set up to make it the barriers to entry so impossible for the regular Joe or for the mom and pop.
Okay.
That when Michigan did their licensing or with their legalization, that they made extra provisions to make it a little easier to enter the market. Would you agree with that? Comparatively, it may not still be ideal, or is that just bad information I got?
I don't know if it's bad information. I don't know if I think that generally I agree. I'm not quite sure. I don't know enough about the other states. I've seen what they've done, what's happened to their markets, and we're seeing sort of the similar cycle in Michigan, where you have a boom and then have some rougher spots, and I think it's sort of just a difficult market correction.
Yeah. Well, everyone that ever smoked pot thought they could start one, and then they started and they realized it's still a business. You still got to run it with a bunch of discipline.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of security measures. There's a lot of regulatory issues. It's
a lot more so than you'd expect.
Yeah.
And in fact, we talked about that. I was talking about that with some folks at the MRA or CRA, the state. They were saying, hey, so what are the barriers here and how do we get rid of them? And to their credit, I think, especially the outgoing director, Andrew Brisboe, has really been a decent guy, I think, for the industry. I think he sort of gets it.
Yeah.
Too bad he's leaving, and I'm not sure if there's shenanigans there or not, but he was asking about barriers to entry, and I had just spoken with somebody in my previous role as a city planner that said, look, I know how to grow weed, and I know how to grow it really well. but I'm worried about getting into business. So you might want to partner, if you can,
Yeah.
because the business side of things is going to be vastly different than the growing side of things.
Yeah.
It's just two different disciplines, and if you don't know what you're doing with the business, your business isn't going to succeed, right?
Yeah.
You want to set entrepreneurs up for success, and so, but I couldn't send them off to someone like Grow, Grand Rapids Opportunities for Women, or like SCORE, right, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, like these different entrepreneurial support organizations that could normally help somebody out because a lot of them have federal funding at the basis,
Right.
so they're prohibited.
They can't even touch it at
Can't
all.
even touch it. I, in fact, had been working with a SCORE mentor myself. I had been looking at starting a cannabis testing lab, and he said, like, day one, let's call this cow milk testing. I'm like, I don't know anything about dairy, you know? And
Yeah.
he's like, doesn't matter for
That's
your
what the
business
appointment's
plan.
called. Yeah.
Once we're done, just do a find replace and change cow milk dairy or whatever to cannabis. And I was like, okay, man, like fine.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's weird. And there just aren't the same kind of opportunities necessarily for support from other organizations that typically would support an entrepreneur because of that federal status. I think we're seeing that change, and I think people are starting to say, okay, we can perhaps help people get started. But in the absence of that, it seems like there is room, at least in West Michigan, for a group like the Guild to step in and say, hey, if you can't find help elsewhere, maybe we can help you. But I've seen things
Yeah.
like business plan competitions or um, things like that are less, I guess, that don't rely on federal funding, that can still sort of support cannabineurs.
Yeah.
But
Cannabineurs.
we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a show on Discovery Plus now that's kind of like a bar rescue show for
Yeah.
dispensaries.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, this is a bad start, just because it hasn't been around very long, and
Right.
bars
Rescue?
usually struggle for 30 years, before so
Yeah.
it might just not be the industry for you if that's happening. But partnering with someone that has the business know-how and you can focus on your skill set is what we need to be doing as a culture anyway. Is like, don't try and get spread too thin, get in your lane and figure it out and then maybe once you have the experience and once you have the mentorship from your consultant or your partner, then you can do it on your own some other day.
I hope so. There are opportunities. There's a lot of ways to get involved in the industry. If it's not even as a licensed company, there's a lot of support industry out there. People are going to provide the soil or cocoa or worms or whatever it might be, or the right water mix or the right
the grow equipment itself,
all the grow equipment itself, the right lights, the right processing equipment, all kinds of things, or figure out how to build a cool a cool pipe or a cool storage box. I mean, a friend that is actually on the board as well, the Cannabis Guild, she has a company, Rich Smoke, that has basically like safe, secure boxes, so you can store your weed at home and not worry about your kids getting into it.
Oh yeah,
because you don't want your kids to open the fridge and take the wrong batch of brownies to school. We hear about like horror stories like that. I mean, yeah, no one wants kids eating this stuff. I think, that's kind of funny, but it's not. You don't want kids
your kid,
getting messed up, and it's like, shit, that sucks. Wish those guys had taken more care. So I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the industry or around the industry, even if it's not as a licensed company. That said, if someone wants to get involved in the industry, they should be able to. They should have the same opportunities as anyone, and that's where I think that these social equity policies, that's mentioned a little bit, could help. My concern with those is that too often they sort of put the burden of meeting those social equity commitments on the industry, which makes it harder to get into the industry itself.
Yeah, because the industry isn't necessarily the ones barring it anyway. It's the regulatory side of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and the insurers and the bankers, all the stuff you already mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question about the MMFLA.
Okay.
Why did they spell marijuana with an H?
My understanding is that that's how it was spelled in some legislation back in the 30s.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're still using outdated spelling of the shit.
I wish they wouldn't use the term marijuana anyway.
Just cannabis is
I mean, I always use cannabis. The state seems to be doing that. But, in the city of Grand Rapids, when I was there and we were working on the ordinance, we used marijuana with an H because it was matching the state. And we're going, man, why do they have to do that?
Marijuana.
Then they started changing it to a J. So we started changing ours to a J. And I was saying cannabis. I'm like, all right, can we just stick with cannabis?
Yeah.
But that said, I mean, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You can also say marijuana or hemp, like for parts of the same cannabis plant.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't want to, I think people also need to be aware of too, is that this is a big industry and, consumables are only part of the possible uses of this plant. And on the hemp side, my goodness, I mean, there's so much you could possibly do. You could, yeah, sure, you can extract some cannabinoids and stuff too, but it's like you could grow for fiber or for the seeds or for the oils or whatever it might be. I mean, fibers. I think it's fascinating to just look at some of this stuff. There's regenerative farming that seems to be working really well with hemp, that can help bring agriculture back and make it more sustainable.
Oh, so you like
Um,
as a grow in your field or whatever, and then you to to replenish the soil
or
or
you can
something.
you can rotate it in with other crops and stuff.
Yeah.
You can remediate soil with it. There's a story about the Russian or I guess Soviet government using um, cannabis to help remediate the soil around Chernobyl before it was Ukraine.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it was radioactive and it still is. I don't know how that worked, but it certainly can pull like heavy metals out of the soil, for example, which is why we will want to test because the cannabis plant
It
is so
could be
versatile, but it can
absorbing
be
some of that stuff. Yeah.
absorbing stuff if you have bad soil that you want to make sure is out of the product before you sell it to consumers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we kind of straightened out the marijuana thing. But yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought that was
so
silly.
when I use the terms marijuana, I usually will say I usually say cannabis because the term the term marijuana has racist origins at least in the States.
because it has like a Mexican, like a Hispanic, Spanish. Is
Yeah.
that the Spanish word for it? Is
Back in the 30s. Oops.
You're good.
Back in the 30s or 40s, that's sort of used as a way to scare white Americans and say, "Oh gosh, look at those Mexicans using this and such."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh man, are we really doing that still?" I think you'll see people in industry or around the industry using marijuana to mean something that has greater than 0.3% THC, right?
Okay.
So the stuff that could get you high, that's considered sort of this is the threshold for what should be marijuana versus not marijuana. What needs to be licensed versus hemp, basically.
Yeah.
Although hemp has its own licensing scheme, framework, and stuff.
And I know people that have had really good success with like some of the salves or like the ointments
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. I took when we were at Electric Forest.
Yeah.
We were doing some other psychedelic things, and I put some CBD like oil. It's like coconut flavored under my tongue, and apparently it's good for anxiety and stuff. So like there's all sorts of uses for it, and it's a natural. Of course it's souped up now with with agricultural improvements and things like that, but it's still a natural thing.
Yep.
So I think the biggest impact that I think it's had, or I don't even know if I want to say the biggest impact, but like culturally, I can't believe how fast it went from being the devil's lettuce to like pretty openly accepted. Again, I understand that it's not fully open, but like it kind of is in terms of people openly talking about it, even in illegal states on Facebook, and like it's definitely changed the thing, which is good because why were we putting any energy to blacklisting something that when used responsibly is a great
I don't know if
product.
the blacklisting has ever been about responsible use.
Yeah.
I think it's been about politics and
racism
othering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you said that because I like your point about how quickly it seems to be changing, how public sentiment seems to be changing. I might argue that it's not really changing as much as just being more open. And you're saying how people are openly okay with it. And I think that's the key word because, like I said earlier with the cannabis industry, we're not saying you're letting cannabis into your community. It's here. You're letting cannabis industry into the community and let it operate openly, right?
Yeah.
And so people, I think, can now be more open in saying, look, yeah, I've used this stuff for years. At least now I know I'm getting, and I know who I'm getting it from. I can be open. And I think that's a good thing. That's all
just across the board.
All across the board.
Yeah. Having, from just from a personal experience, when you're not being yourself or being open and you're hiding things, it kind of makes you a dishonest, manipulative person to some degree.
Sure.
And then you have all that other shame. It ends up just being a worse experience in life when you're not owning up to what you're up to,
Yep.
So like even me just saying that I was doing other psychedelics at the Electric Forest, that's not something I would have said probably 2 years ago.
Right.
You know? But I just don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not selling it. I don't have a bunch of it here or anything like that, but it's like
I thought they didn't allow that stuff at the forest.
Electric Forest, the security I said this on another podcast, but the security there made like pre 9/11 TSA look like look like the Gestapo or something
I
like
think that, there's also another license type of temporary marijuana event at the state. I think that the forest could probably very successfully become a marijuana event if Rothbury opted in for that.
Yeah, because it's already happening.
It's already
They might as
happening,
well
but
make
you
it
can just
official.
sell it there, and you can that's the big difference is that you can actually have a dispo there selling products that instead of people just bringing it from home, and they go, oh shit, man, I really want some weed. I forgot it at
Go
home
make
or
some
something
money
like that.
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can go get some in the main grounds or the entrance.
Yeah, in the vendor area, and it'll, it's going to be safe and regulated
Right.
and tested and all the other stuff. Yeah.
So I think, around, the events, that's another place where the guild's kind of pushing, particularly in Grand Rapids, just because Grand Rapids has taken a sort of wait and see approach to a lot of things, like lounges, like I mentioned, it's in the ordinance, but not enabled yet, and events. And we're seeing events happening all over the place. And I'm going, oh man, wouldn't it be nice here? You talked about Breakaway coming up this weekend. That's awesome. Breakaway is a great event. And I've talked to the Breakaway organizers, like they were saying, what can we do to make this thing a consumption event?
Yeah.
So that, because people are already smoking it.
Yeah.
Like we know it.
The cops aren't
They're
even
bringing
don't
it
even
in.
care. We always smoke a
Sure.
joint in front of a cop. They're not there for that. It's
Yeah.
like,
But being able to have it for sale there, that
Yeah.
would certainly promote some local businesses, perhaps.
yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think the more legitimately we can all represent the community, the better it is for the cause.
Well, and we can probably bring in some more events too for the community. Like, I know that our city leaders are concerned about making sure they have a high quality of life for everyone, and they have some concerns about what that means. But they also have concerns about economic development and tourism, and events like Breakaway. They could probably bring in many more events like Breakaway, like the Canna Carnival is also this weekend in Muskegon. Muskegon has gone full on,
Yeah.
with cannabis, and I think to their benefit. And I think that the city leaders would probably tell you the same thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Muskegon needed it more a little bit. That's why Grand Rapids can kind of. They're still looking for tourism, but they're doing well enough that they don't need to be as aggressive, and not. Then you mix that in with the conservatism that kind of exists here. Like when we first got licensed, we used to have to drive out to Lowell. No offense to that place. I'm trying to think what it is out there.
There are a few.
Yeah,
Lowell
but-
has a bunch.
But
They
yeah,
only have like
they
5
were
or
the
6
only
in the
one for a
few
while.
blocks.
So it was like, yeah, sure, it was legal in Kent County.
Meds Cafe.
Meds Cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's legal, but like the prices were high just because there's no competition, and it wasn't exactly convenient for us who have the means to drive 25 minutes each way.
Yeah.
But some folks aren't going to be able to get it. So is it really legal if you're not making it accessible to people? And is that that's a social?
I mean, those
equity
guys
concept.
would have said, "Hey, I'll just deliver to you."
Yeah, of course. Again, no offense to Meds Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
They were up and running doing it, but
Yeah.
I could see that it had to have been a political wait and see approach, or kind of drag their feet.
Sure.
Because the people that are running the shit in Kent County weren't into it yet, or whatever it was.
Although Grand Rapids had a very high support for Prop 1, for example. I mean, some of the highest in the state.
From the voters' perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think citywide it was like 63, 65, 67, somewhere in that percent in favor. And we see that in other communities that still haven't opted in. It's like, so why exactly? Why are you waiting so long? I was actually in New Buffalo last night. New Buffalo and New Buffalo Township are going through the same thing right now. And they had similar levels of voter support in 2018. We saw Grand Haven opt in, which I never thought would happen, especially with their current mayor.
Yeah.
But they did not have that kind of support, but they still had the highest support in Ottawa County. So it's like, all right,
if it's going to happen in Ottawa, it's probably where it's got to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But we'll see with New Buffalo. We'll see with like other places around the area. Not everywhere has to opt in too. Like there was just a vote, I want to say the primaries a couple weeks ago in Meridian Township outside of Lansing.
Yeah.
That one where they opted in, the voters opted in to allow adult use cannabis stores by 14 votes. Right. So razor thin margin. As like, and I actually written a letter to the editor saying, look guys, you don't have to. Like, I'm a cannabis advocate. And you don't need to worry. The disinformation that's out there. Oh, it's gonna be so much crime. Oh, it's gonna be so much traffic. It's gonna be so much odor. All the kids are gonna start using it. All that stuff was there. And I was saying, you don't have to worry about that. Traffic is a land use impact, but that's gonna go away immediately because the novelties wears off. Like it's just
the
another
first month it
retailer
might
at
be
that
super
point.
packed. Then people are gonna get the hang of it.
We call it the Chick-fil-A effect.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so it's crazy for a little bit, and then you go, oh yeah, okay, whatever. This isn't that special.
Yeah.
I can get this anywhere. And I also said to Meridian Township, you probably don't need that $56,000 per store of tax revenues. You don't need to have that. You don't need to have these 25,000 jobs that's been created in this direct jobs in this state. That's okay. Not everywhere has to have them. If people want weed, they can always go to East Lansing, right next door, down to Lansing,
where there's a bunch of them.
or anywhere else that's opting in. But still, Meridian voters were like, yeah, we see past this bullshit.
Yeah.
That everyone's always spewing, and we're okay with 14 votes. Even when it's like a poorly worded ballot initiative.
Yeah,
But
of course. Yeah, I'm sure like in 5 years, once they finally get a dispensary up and running there, and everyone's becomes when the disinformation goes away and they're just fans of it,
Just
it wouldn't be
normalized.
14 votes anymore if they rewrite
Right,
the vote.
right.
It'd probably be unanimous, I feel like.
What's interesting is that, I wouldn't say it's a problem with the state's framework, but it certainly makes it for a complicated framework, is that every community can opt in or opt out, and they can choose which licenses to opt in for or opt out, and they can choose medical or adult use or both, and they can choose where to allow them.
Yeah.
So it's great for a consultant like me,
Yeah.
right? Because I can go, okay, I'll look in this ordinance and figure it out and tell you what it means. And people who are like we were talking about earlier with, I'm just trying to run a business or I just want to grow weed, Okay, well, but you don't even have to deal with ordinances because what a mess, right? So you have 1,773 communities in Michigan and 6% have opted in. Well, I should say 6% for adult use, 9% for medical. That's relatively few places in the state still that are allowing these things. Less than 100 communities for both. Um, but they're finding that there aren't those land use impacts. The kids aren't smoking more. There's no
Kids are already smoking,
there is
folks.
zero correlation though. This is the interesting part, is that these studies have been coming out saying, sure, there are odors from grows, but you can mitigate those with filters, or you might drive down 131 and get a little whiff if from Flourish or something like that. Okay, but it's like it's not permeating the atmosphere, right?
Have you? I
You
mean,
don't see crime impacts.
Yeah, yeah.
The traffic impacts, sure, those go up a little bit, but crime is like any other retailer. And then there's no correlation at all to proximity for youth use. It doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, they're already smoking it. If they're going to smoke it,
Yeah.
The opportunity here is, I wouldn't say I'm arguing here for lowering the age, but it's like the kids are going to smoke it. They're gonna consume it. Wouldn't you rather have them getting it for the right place?
Yeah, so they're not getting shit that has fungus in it or whatever,
Sure.
or mites or yeah,
Sure.
it's like, yeah, I think we're heading that way though, at least. Thanks to your good work though.
I hope it gets normalized, and it's at the end of the day, it's just another industry, and we got to treat it like one. There are so many rules that don't necessarily have a basis in fact, but more a basis in fear. And it's like, this is not how we should be governing things.
Right.
And why are we doing it to this one? Okay, well, it's because of all this disinformation, right?
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard to figure out where are the valid concerns that we should have.
Yeah, when you're
versus the
you're
bullshit
polluted
we
with a
go
bunch of
into.
BS all the time. Yeah.
So I'm very hopeful for the future. I think that it's going to be better. People are going to, like you said, 5 years down the road, it's just going to be another store on the street.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go to it, you don't go to it. You don't have to go to a bar.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to any business you don't want to, right? Fine, except for maybe the DMV, right? But like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's still a destination, it's still elective. People can go, choose to go, and it's not harming anyone that's not going. So,
yeah, I would think that from
we're
a
getting there.
party line perspective, and I don't want to make it about that,
Sure.
but I'm just curious. Is it pretty drawn? I mean, in terms of support and non-support?
No.
It's kind of spread.
You mean across like major parties?
Yeah, I mean, because I can see the libertarian folks types. They would be for it, I would think, because you're doing your own thing. The more liberal side of people see the social inequity part of it as a big win.
Yep.
But obviously that leaves the kind of the GOP. I'm just curious, and I don't mean this to be alienating to anyone listening. You're entitled to your beliefs or whatever, but it's I'm just curious.
I mean, and the guild is nonpartisan.
Yeah.
Very strongly so. Like that's a big principle of ours. And we have policy meetings now and then. We have candidates show up to our member meetings
Of both parties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple. I want to say in our June meeting we had Representative Brand, who's Republican. He showed up, Tommy Brand, and was like, "Look, I don't know that much about cannabis, but I want to learn." And he got a round of applause, a standing ovation from the crowd because they were like, "That's awesome. We don't necessarily agree with you on everything, but we do on
we
that.
don't have to."
But I would say the crowd is mixed too. I know several people in the organization who consider themselves Republican, conservative. Cannabis. That's the beauty of cannabis. Is it crosses party lines. Everyone can learn to love it. What I would say is that we had another. I'm thinking about an event we had last fall. Senator Brinks, Winnie Brinks State Senator Brinks from Grand Rapids, she said, it's nice because she thinks the difference sort of between Democrats and Republicans, or that Democrats can more openly talk about it. Republicans don't necessarily disagree, or like their legislation may not necessarily reflect it, but they may not personally feel anything about it.
Yeah.
So they just can't be as open with their constituents because their constituents are still worried.
Yeah, and there's gonna more of an old school vibe in there. Yeah, with which those people are just have been fed disinformation.
Sure.
You know.
But that said, I mean, we see Republican representatives or senators and Democrats, Republican or Democratic representatives or senators. I mean, they're always making legislation, and the legislation is a mix of good and bad. You know, for the industry, uh, harder regulations or easier regulations. It doesn't really matter who it's coming from, and we see bipartisan support of a lot of bills come through. I mean,
Probably both
federal
good and
legislation.
both good and
Absolutely.
bad bills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and we talked to him. Like we had a discussion about this bill that ultimately passed, but we talked to the representative, LeGrand in this case from Grand Rapids. So what are you doing? This is going to have some unintended consequences. And he was one of the sponsors of the bill, and he ultimately voted against it.
Oh, nice.
And because we had advocates saying, "Wait, look at all these impacts that you didn't necessarily think about or consider when you were drafting the bill, or maybe it got added as an amendment, whatever it might be. Let's talk about this." And I mean, politicians will respond to that.
Yeah.
And often they'll recognize it immediately or say, "Yeah, I've thought about that. I'm glad you brought that up."
Yeah.
I'm not hearing that much, but you know, it has you have a good basis for saying it, and so we're like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Whether or not it passes or not.
Yeah, there's so much complexity to all these things that like when people try and really
There's a
simplify
lot.
like politicians, like it's like everything they do has so many reactions. It's like some of the most well-meaning legislation can turn into the worst thing ever.
Absolutely.
It's so
Yep.
try to be folks, try to be more like be a stoner and be cool. Okay. And
Half the politicians are probably stoners too. They just won't necessarily agree or tell you that
yeah, definitely
ever in public, but
my wife's an attorney. I know a lot of lawyers.
lawyers are a high consumer group.
Oh yeah.
Just saying they're I should say that was pun intended, right? But like I would say they're one of the larger consumer groups.
Yeah.
But they might not be the ones that going into the store to get it. They might
Right.
get home delivery, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they're nervous about the stigma or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know that
Politicians too.
marijuana or cannabis law is a big kind of growing industry too, just because of the complexity of the legislation. That's an industry that is going to pop up anytime there's a new.
Oh yeah.
So I've had some friends of ours say, "You guys should really get into that," but I don't know. It's a lot. My wife's not super into regulation, so it's
okay. Yeah, then maybe not cannabis. But we talked to folks too. It's like, if you're going to pass an ordinance, make it like something you could administer with your current staff capacity. I mean, shoot, Grand Rapids has decent capacity as far as staff goes, and we were still, when I was there, I mean, I was a de facto cannabis administrator for 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years, and it was hard. Like that was a lot of work, and I was basically a full-time job. I'm like, holy cow, like this is too much. I wish we had created an ordinance that was a little bit easier to administer.
Yeah.
And I see it across the board. Why are you making it so hard? Is there a real good reason? Probably not. Like,
other than unless they're trying to create barriers. If they're trying to create barriers.
And I understand too that it's a big unknown, or at least it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
To their credit, a lot of places do some pretty good research. A lot of cities, they'll go out and look at more mature markets. We had a group from Grand Rapids go out to Denver and check the place out and go, okay, and talk to people. And I thought it was really sort of a thoughtful approach. And they're going to make the decisions for all kinds of reasons. But a lot of times politicians are just going, man, I want to make it something reasonable that can sort of respect the public concerns, regardless of where those are from or why people are concerned.
Yeah, regardless.
But respects those concerns, while still allowing the industry to operate. Whether or not allows the industry to thrive is a bigger question. But so I think I think sort of a cautious approach isn't a bad thing necessarily, but at some point you got to come back to it and say, okay, we were cautious. Was it for the right reasons? Can we make it a little bit easier now, or is the damage already done? And that's
now that we
concern.
see the data too. Now that you show the data,
the data.
Like the smell, the odor thing is really funny to me because I grew up in Bay City, Michigan, which has our claim to fame for a long time was that we had the most bars per capita. We had like 85 bars and only 40,000 people or something.
Dang.
And now there's like 15 dispensaries or something as well. So they went all in as well.
They sure did.
But that's a town that has been plagued by the sugar beet factory that smells so bad. There's been like pending litigation for 40 years on this thing.
Oh man.
Or I worked in Zeeland for a while right next to a turkey farm.
Yep.
And that's far worse, so like don't tell me that like this weed smell is a problem.
I think the smell of weed is lovely.
It's delicious.
I don't know, like I walked into a grow I'm like, oh man, fresh, like on when it's before it's been harvested,
It's still
especially.
moist. Yeah.
Oh, it just smells lovely.
Yeah.
And maybe that's biased, and maybe I've gotten to, maybe it's acquired taste or acquired smell, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, there's certainly a lot worse smells out there, I think.
All right. Well, if you notice that we were in a different position than when you were last seeing us, it's only because we had some technical
Should I put
issues.
my sunglasses?
I had a battery issue. Yeah. Continuity stuff. Okay. So first off, I've enjoyed this, Landon. It's been really
It's
informational.
been great.
What I'd like to do now, why don't you just select one hot button or, something that's current that you're really facing now and really localize it to the Grand Rapids community. If there's an ordinance
Sure.
or a movement or something that you're really kind of spearheading, and don't be afraid to give a lot of detail on it, and kind of explain what, what,
I got detail.
what exactly it is that we're looking for and what we're doing, what you're trying to push and what the resistance is, I guess.
Okay. So a little background. Grand Rapids had decrim ordinance in 2012. In 2018, I want to say July 2018, the city opted in to allow the medical industry. The adult use industry wasn't enabled by the state until later, late that fall.
Mm.
But then following that, in July 2020, I think it was, the city opted in to allow adult use too, which is a good thing because medical only ordinances are very difficult, largely because medical only companies have a very difficult time surviving.
Yeah.
We've seen that in too many places where you go, are you trying to hurt the industry? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah. Right.
But they might not tell you that. Anyway, Grand Rapids, though, I think, it has a lot of community support. Like I mentioned, the Prop 1 for MRPA, the adult use
That was 2018.
referendum, in late 2018, passed statewide. I want to say 55, 56%. In Grand Rapids, it was closer to 65, 66, 67, somewhere in there. I think a couple precincts were like in the 80s, probably around here, actually, in the Heritage Hill area in Midtown.
Yeah, that's right.
So, that was probably some of the highest in the state. Anyway, so there's good community support. Although you always will find that a lot of people will support, we call it NIMBYs in planning, not in my backyard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you'll see people support a certain land use, but then be like, but I don't really want it close to me. So
Over
there's
on the other side of town.
What's that?
We can have it over on the other side.
Other
of town.
side of
It's
town.
Not, yeah.
I wouldn't say we got that necessarily from public, average citizens as much as from the city commission. That was mostly just saying, let's create an ordinance that sort of limits the number of stores. They were mostly concerned about stores, and sort of base the whole ordinance on stores, but they also allow grows and processors and testing labs and secure transporters.
Right.
So the state licensing framework is complex. There are 20 license types. I think 13 in adult use and 8 or 7 or something in medical. And so Grand Rapids has opted in to allow most medical and adult use license types. The thing was, the ordinance is somewhat complicated because I think that the intent of the city commission when they adopted it was to limit the number without limiting the number, like limit the number by requiring spacing from other land uses. The commissioners were often asking, how many is this going to result in? And we thought, well, probably like 30. I would say it ended up being less. But that's like, how many parcels are okay? And there are 67,000 parcels in the city. And we're like, oh, there are 1,200 parcels. They're going to be okay. And that's going to result in like 30 or 35 stores.
Yeah.
And that was the major concern. Like I said, everyone was concerned about stores. Oh, stores are going to be, these could be the opening Pandora's box, so we want to approach this carefully. So what they did is they require, 2,000 feet between dispensaries. They require 1,000 feet from a church, or a park or public playground, or a substance use disorder program. Except those 3 land uses, they can have a waiver. The planning commission can give them a waiver. They can't anymore, but they could at the time. Then they also said we need 1,000 feet from a school, K-12,
Yep.
public or private. We need 1,000 feet from residential, but only along the same street face. So if you turn a corner and stuff like that. So and then they added on youth center later on, which and removed the possibility of waivers. youth center at the time that they adopted it was not a defined term, so no one knew what a youth center was or what this was going to
It could
mean.
be applied as they wanted.
It was pretty. It was a pretty. You know, I as a former employee and knowing several commissioners myself, I think that they're good people, and but I still think that that decision was a bad one, and you know that wasn't good governance. You know, you shouldn't without knowing where your youth centers are because it's undefined use, you shouldn't start requiring separation from that.
Yeah.
And and B, when there's no reason, and we've seen it again and
Yeah,
again.
you have the
At the
data
time,
now. You have the
we
data
have the
now,
data, and we
especially.
had it at the time saying, look, there's no correlation between youth use and proximity here. But whatever, Grand Rapids is Grand Rapids, and there are constituencies, and there are power brokers, and youth center was one thing that got added in. That's fine. Then they threw in the Clean Air in Public Places ordinance that prohibits consumption of anything, any cannabis, anywhere basically. But that's a different story too. So the ordinance itself was pretty restrictive, and at the time we thought we could have, like I said, probably 35 stores, and I think we're going to end up with about 25. And for all intents and purposes, there are no more opportunities in the city
So it's locked out.
for a
Definitely.
standalone store, because of the latest roundup ordinances really added youth center. And that also makes it very difficult for an operator, even an existing operator, because if they're suddenly basically if the rules change so that now their property would no
Yeah, they
longer
have
be
to move.
eligible.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to move, but if they want to expand or change anything about it, they can't legally anymore because the rules changed on them. So they have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a whole process, a lot of money. And it's like, are we really trying to make this easier or not?
Yeah.
So Grand Rapids had a fairly restrictive ordinance. We're trying to the sort of the question of what's the guild doing about it. We're trying to change it. We're trying to lessen the ordinance a bit, just sort of relax, I would say, some of the rules because we know that place is locked out now. We have interest in people for micro businesses. They do allow micro businesses. That was one of the changes too, except it's a fairly restrictive allowance for micro businesses as well. Micro business being like 150 plants, processing and retail all in the same store.
And that's pretty small. Do we have any micro businesses here in
No,
GR?
I'm aware of a couple that are trying to start. The state recently changed the rules to allow a Class A micro business, which is 300 plants, no processing and retail, and you can sell your products to like different places and carry other products.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be more viable, and I think it will be.
Yeah.
But the city doesn't allow that still because they're like, well, it's not a micro business; it's a Class A micro business.
Right.
They're not the same. So okay, we'll change the rules then to allow a Class A micro business. And why are we nitpicking on this?
Yeah.
But that's a different story too.
Of course.
So we're trying to bring in, I say, 4 new license types, being the Class A micro business, the designated consumption establishment, the consumption lounge, temporary marijuana events. I want to stop seeing these events go elsewhere. I mean, they're going in West Michigan, and the guild covers West Michigan, so we're happy to see them going to
But
Muskegon.
yeah, it'd be cool in GR too, though.
Yeah, it'd be great to in GR, and folks like Breakaway say the same thing, or Upheaval and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to bring in medical education and research licenses too. I don't necessarily think that the city commission is going to have any problem with any of these, but they're going to want to make sure that there's been public engagement. They're going to want to make sure they understand the data,
Yeah.
and that it basically that we're presenting a good case and that we have good public support. So we're building that. We have some events coming up. We're going to sort of kick off the campaign this year, hoping to bring an ordinance to the city as soon as next January.
2023.
Yep, because we have a lot of events who have been calling me, calling others on the board, going, when is this going to happen in Grand Rapids? We want to come to your city and do our events. We want to have a cannabis culinary festival. We want to have Breakaway with consumption. We want to have a lounge. We want to have, the rooftop deck where you're not going to get arrested if you light up.
Yeah.
We want to change the Clean Air in Public Places ordinances. It's too restrictive. It doesn't allow. It basically. I know the intent was to sort of match what the state was doing, but it went too far. It went too far with where you can consume legally or not consume legally, with what you can consume. Like I said, edibles have no place in the Clean Air ordinance.
Yeah.
We're looking at changing that. We've heard several stores talk about, hey, could you allow drive-throughs? We allow drive-throughs for McDonald's, but there's this. That's where some of the disinformation. Well, someone's just going to eat it as soon as they start driving.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? They might do that anyway if they're doing curbside, or they can go into a store
And get
and
in the
walk
car and
out
do it.
and do it. But we don't have really data to back it up.
Yeah. But I mean, there's
But
drive-through liquor stores.
there are drive-through liquor stores, although not in Grand Rapids.
Right.
But it's
True.
like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And what's the problem? Do we really want to make these poor dispo employees walk out in the rain to give you your paper bag that's getting soaked? Or wouldn't it be easier just to pull up to a drive-through? Things like that might have initially, or make it a special land use. Have the public process where you have to go to the planning commission, have a public hearing, all that stuff. That makes sense. So we're just sort of trying to relax the rules enough to make it reasonable. I would love to see some lessening of these separation distances. Personally, I think
Yeah. Especially in
there's,
light of the proximity data.
yeah, I understand concerns for youth and schools and stuff like that, playgrounds. Fine. If people are worried about that, even though the data does not support the
You can
proximity,
concede that still. Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Church, what exactly is going on here? And which is funny because, and the church thing is problematic to me for several reasons. Number one, when there still were waivers allowed, churches were coming to us asking, how much am I supposed to charge these guys? You don't charge them anything. What are you talking about? Well, we need a new roof, and if they want this waiver so bad, and like people were talking about opening churches so they could get essentially bribe the cannabis companies. I'm like, something's wrong here, right?
They're already not paying taxes, churches.
They're already not paying taxes.
Yeah.
They
shouldn't have any say at all, frankly.
Well, whatever, they have say, and that's fine, and that's part of Grand Rapids. But it's like my big issue is that it sort of unnecessarily butts the industries together. I shouldn't necessarily refer for the church as an industry, but oops.
Yeah.
But why are we having churches and cannabis automatically adversarial based on this ordinance when churches aren't necessarily adversarial? And I'm going to say that very publicly. Churches aren't adversarial to cannabis, not by definition. There are many churches who are.
Yeah.
I don't quite know why. And I've talked to enough pastors and deacons and priests and whoever and rabbis and imams who have said, we don't really have a personal problem with cannabis, but it's the same kind of thing. But our constituents do, and our congregations are concerned about it.
Yeah.
And so, we want to be careful with that, and maybe a separation is okay. We don't want someone walking across the street and coming into our church high. Like, what? There's some logic breakdown, but there is always a logic breakdown when it comes
That's
to
the only way
cannabis.
you're going to get me into a church, by the way.
So I'd like to consider that pretty strongly. I don't know if that's going to be a big push from the guild this year to try to change the separation distances.
Yeah.
We certainly want to open up more opportunities.
Yeah.
The city has also had a lot of, I think, really good discussions about social equity. I've said it before, but I think the social equity plan, the intents are good. The city wants to help provide more opportunities, especially for people of color. People of color have gotten shit on from the war on drugs for 50 years, and it's like maybe this is a way we can start to address those wrongs.
Yeah.
I just feel like, if everyone wants to get to that point of let's address these historical wrongs, we're just disagreeing on how to do it. And my perspective is, if you really want to help people get into the industry, don't make it harder to get into the industry by putting all these commitment requirements onto the industry, which is what happened.
Right.
And at the time I thought it was the right move. Now I don't. And that's just because I've had more experience.
You
in the
learn
industry
more.
now.
Yeah.
Learn more, and I think the city is learning more too. But that's still their sort of major, I think, goal is making sure that there's some social equity, or they can increase social equity in the industry.
Yeah.
And they're working through that right now. They just had a discussion last week where they're saying, okay, we're gonna bring in a new policy to determine how can we help cannabis companies meet those commitments they already made if they're having trouble making them right now.
Yeah.
Or can't or won't. There's a whole narrative there too. Like we're saying, oh, they're just not even worrying about it. It's like, that's not the case though. You talk to enough operators, and I work with them as a consultant too, and I see their books and I'm going, they're trying, man. Like they're trying to hire
money. Yeah.
they're trying to hire locals. They're trying to work with local businesses. They're having, they're doing what they said they were going to do. They're just having trouble meeting the exact letter. This is not a reason to shut down a company.
Right.
And that was what was happening. They were getting this close. Like the state, a couple licensees were about to get shut down, and only were able to stay open because they filed a action at the state to get an immediate stay of this order to shut down. I'm going, is this really what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
Are you trying to shut down a business? I'll use Flourish, for example. They were in an article last week saying just that.
Yeah.
They were having trouble meeting one of their points. and the city sent the state non-renewal notice saying that they didn't meet their commitments, so we're not going to renew them. And the state said, okay, we're not going to renew your license, but without any real like understanding of what was going on. I'm thinking Flourish, that facility in town, I think employs 200, 300 people.
I like that facility too.
You know, I mean, some people are going to be like, I would say, especially locally in the industry, you have this sort of not even locally, but statewide, you have this big company, little company stress and tension. There's always going to be that.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a whole reason for that sort of battle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's say, regardless, you like Farmhouse, you like Flourish, doesn't matter to me. Like they're growing weed, they're providing jobs, they're doing what they're supposed to do. You know, that's fine. If we're going to shut someone down, we just got to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. Are they actually causing some sort of public health issue?
Yeah.
You know,
And is there intent too?
Is there intent? Yeah, and if they're making a good faith effort, let's respect that.
Yeah.
And if they're not making a good faith effort, that's where I think you got to drop the hammer. But it's really hard to make that judgment.
Yeah.
So Grand Rapids is kind of it's a big one, and there's a lot of issues going on. The guild is going to try to bring in more licenses, essentially try to make more opportunities for locals. I think we have a good opportunity, especially for some of those license types I mentioned.
Yeah.
Because those weren't in the law. They weren't in MRMA, which is very difficult. Michigan recreational. Man, I used to know all the acronyms by heart. But
that's the one that made it.
MRMA is the one that allows the adult use industry statewide.
Yeah.
But those license types, the lounge, the event, Class A micro, medical education and research, those aren't in law. So they're sort of administrative licenses that were created. So I think we have a lot more opportunity as a city, and the city leaders, I think, to maybe play some more, put some more opportunities with social equity onto those license types, particularly like micro businesses or lounges.
Yeah, where there's less of a barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the commissioners are on board. Cool. We just need to get an ordinance before them and have them vote yes on it.
Well, I have a friend from Electric Forest who I met that did 5 years in Massachusetts State Prison for gummy bears 3 months before it became legal in Massachusetts. Or just before it was already medically, I don't know, whatever, it was close to then. And because of that, he did his time, whatever, he's cool with it. But because of that, he's now considered like a victim of the war on drugs in Massachusetts. And now he has like, if he wants to apply for a license, he gets like all the way automatically up to the top. He has all these extra benefits and advantages because of the fact that he was kind of wronged from it, you know? So when you think about the war on drugs against the people of color and all that, like people are going to complain and call it affirmative action or whatever, but those are the only people that never had to deal with being disadvantaged by it. You know, it's like,
and to their credit, I think like the state and local governments are doing that with their social equity policies. They'll sort of, maybe not reward, but recognize that if you have a past record that's about something that's legal now, maybe that shouldn't count against you.
Yeah.
And in fact, it might help you. So the state, like, they'll lower your license fees, your annual licensing fees, get you ahead in the line. Your process will go a little faster.
Yeah.
We've seen some of the things there, and so I think that's a good thing. It may not matter, you know, that may not be the most effective, but that maybe the state's own good faith effort as trying to do something that they can, even if it doesn't make that much difference, it's making a difference. So
well, when you think about a city like Grand Rapids, if we're going to end up at 25 dispensaries and we're going to be locked in there basically because of the proximity requirements or the distances, you know, then there is no more opportunity in it. Right. And so the city continues to grow, and is 25 enough to support? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe there's more, maybe there's room for 50 here, you know, but like, it can't really be a true free, you know, people always talk about capitalism, let the invisible hand work.
It's not a free market.
That's not what it is at that point, you know? So
it's interesting. You know, I think that there's, damn it, you're editing. I just lost it again. Just talking about 25. That was where it was
25 stores, and there's room for more. Yeah.
So your point about like 25 stores in Grand Rapids, maybe that's enough, maybe it's not. You know, there are going to be opportunities where people can buy a store. Ownership changes hands all the time. That's actually been a social equity issue, is like they wanted to have so much resident ownership. When I was on staff, it was going, okay, well, that's not going to really matter after you apply, because people are going to move and you're going to get investments, and your ownership, you know, percentages and stuff might change. I love the idea of resident ownership, but we got to face business reality.
Yeah.
Since that time, actually, we've had some weird fights with that, where the city is not currently taking that view and saying, no, you said you're going to have residential status here for 3 years. You got to have So I have a client who they got investment. They were a small business. They got investment, and suddenly their ownership stake was diluted, and now they're down below that number. Even though people still live in the city, but they
Yeah.
have out of town investors. It's like, are you going to shut them down for that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's little things like that that can add up and make it difficult.
Yeah.
But we're moving in the right direction. People are sort of recognizing the value. We got the guild being active, trying to do what it can to make the industry and how you get into it easier.
Well,
So
I mean, as consumers, we appreciate it, but
sure.
I think for people listening and watching, why don't you explain how to get involved?
Yeah,
What are some upcoming events here? You
sure.
brought some T-shirts. That logo is
Oh yeah,
awesome. I love that
like this.
logo. Yeah.
I don't know if
So
this
it's
can
the
show,
mitten
but
holding the joint, and the
yeah,
smoke
mitten
is
hole
the
in the
UP.
joint. Yep. It's our most popular T-shirt. We have a sort of much more.
Like this,
The logo is much more
formal.
formal and sort of genteel, but we're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
the one you hand
that's
out
not
to.
the
You hand that
cannabis
one out to the
industry.
politicians. This is the one
Exactly,
you hand out to the constituents.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guild's been around. We're I would say getting much more active as far as events. We've always hosted like policy events, stuff like that. We did some webinars last year with like CRA director Brisboe and stuff, and we bring in politicians. I think that the best way is to, I mean, just get involved and show up to a meeting. Like
Yeah.
we're having meetups starting. We have one coming up on September 7th in Muskegon, No Name Saloon. That you don't have to be a member to show up. It's just like cannabis industry meetup. You show up, hang out, talk to people, get connected. We're gonna do another one in Kalamazoo in October 5th. We have member meetings for people. I mean, it's $25 a year.
Yeah.
Uh,
$2 a month.
$2 a month. It's not too much of a lift, and you usually get it right back as far as when you get discounts. You get a bunch of swag. You get there are a lot of benefits to being a member, and
Yeah.
like we should really be raising our prices, but
Yeah.
we haven't
Get
quite gotten
on
there.
now while you can,
Right,
folks. Yeah.
do it right now. Our next member meeting is September 21st at Mitten Brewing up on Leonard Street here in Grand Rapids.
Mhm.
Um, it's we usually fill a room there, and I know that upstairs room can't hold that many people. But anyone who wants to show up can show up. You don't for the September 21st meeting. You don't have to be a member. Uh, although you're probably not going to get a gift
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're not a member, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You can also join right there
Yeah.
to get that gift.
Get that
if you
gift.
want.
Yeah. High
Mhm.
pressure. Yeah.
But we have like I said, business networking meetings or events. We have field trips. We're starting to work on different sort of creative ways of sort of bringing in the local stores. If you show up and you flash your card, maybe you get something,
Yeah.
some kind of coupon that day.
That's cool.
We have big plans for the future, but right now the I guess the big push for the guild is getting members, welcoming people, saying, yeah, you're part of it, or you want to be part of it. This is a big tent. You can come, you can hang out and meet these really cool people. Cannabis parties are the best parties, man. I mean, they're good, and we don't have consumption events yet. We do have member sessions now and then
Yeah.
at private residence.
If anyone ever wants to come to the attic, I'm
Right.
down. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have an attic session these
Yeah.
days.
For sure.
Because private residence is legal to consume.
Yeah.
We've talked about doing things like infused dinners. We have a lot of interest in that. We've had a lot of interest from hotels and venues and bars and restaurants in town because they're going, boy, wouldn't it be cool to let our guests consume legally in our hotel if they want to? Wouldn't it be great if we could serve our customers an infused dinner if they want it? Wouldn't it be great if maybe not bars? We've had interest in bars, but they're mostly going, hey, can we be a lounge too?
Yeah.
You can't really mix alcohol and weed, not yet.
Yeah.
And crossfitting is never that great of an idea, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah. You can't fight for everything because some of it's not necessarily the right.
No,
Yeah.
and like I said, we're looking out for data. We're not out there going cannabis at every step, high THC all the way. No,
Yeah.
we're not saying go off and get high and go drive. We're not saying go crossfade by mixing.
Yeah.
Be a cool, normal consumer. Like everyone, you know this, and people are gonna make mistakes and stuff.
Yeah.
But we're trying to help people not.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing with the guild too. Is like the politics and the regulations are so Byzantine. There's so much going on. How do you possibly keep track of it all? The guild, honestly, we have capacity and we can't keep track of it all.
Right.
We have a current issues page. We had too much on there, so we split up to a federal, state, and local. And we put as much as we can on there.
And you're still missing stuff.
But we're still missing stuff. And we
Yeah.
say, hey, if you know stuff that we don't have on here, we want to know about it. Like, let us know.
Yeah, that's a call to action to folks listening and watching to some degree. I mean, the only way to affect change is to be involved.
Yep.
You know, and whether that's for cannabis or for your local school or whatever the F it is.
Yep.
And the only way to get a lobbying group to the point where it can be highly powerful is to have it be large. So
Absolutely.
if you're bitching about the cannabis industry in Grand Rapids or West Michigan, pay $25, a year and
Or if you're a
become
college
a number.
student,
Yeah.
it's free. You gotta have a .edu email address and tell us when you're going to graduate. But it's like, we want you to be involved, and and if you're in the industry, you want to be in the industry, just show up to a meeting, check it out.
Yeah.
You're gonna have fun. You pay for it for a year, and it's gonna come back to you.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Do it now before we raise our rates and stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably January. But also, yeah, like you said, I mean, the world is run by people who show up, right? And it's the squeaky wheels. That is so frustrating as city staff too, because they go, oh, what does this guy do in the city commission? And they're listening to him because he's here, right? Oh, that pissed me off. And it doesn't have to be whatever it is. It can be anything.
Yeah.
I'm going, man, just because he showed up, he has a more powerful voice already.
Right.
What we do is not only like lobbying. We're not lobbyists. We're a political advocacy group. It's a nonprofit. We have a PAC. The PAC is sort of its own thing. The organization though is so much more. But you're absolutely right. Like, we only really get power when we have numbers.
Yeah.
And we know that people are out there. We know they're interested. And stoners they can still do stuff. You're not stuck to your couch. It's still easy to just open your phone.
Yeah. I remember there was a Simpsons one time where I don't know if you remember this. It was about the big vote. They're trying to get it passed, and like the day came, and like everyone,
they just forgot to go. Right?
They forgot to go.
Were we supposed to vote?
Oh shit! It was today. Yeah, they all like got together for a big rally like the day after the election or something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, I mean, there is that.
Yeah, to some degree.
We were joking because I got to the wrong street here, and classic stoner move.
He came to the wrong
house.
To
the wrong house. I surprised this poor woman who came on our porch and was
She's
like, "Oh, hi."
I guess I could interview you.
Right. I figured it out though, and I'm not stoned. I wasn't then either. But,
no.
But we joke that you can join when you're high. You can donate to the PAC when you're high.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even going to ask you. We do ask, like, when people, sign up for some members or like member events, especially, we'll say like, hey, check these boxes to show that they actually read it, and things like, I'm going to be cool and not say the location of this, member only event, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we'll say, hey, do you know what time it is? In California, it's 4:20 there, it's 7:20 here. Little things like that.
Yeah.
Just to sort of keep people on their toes. Were you high when you were doing this? People check that all the time. Yes, I was high when I registered.
Of course.
Maybe they're joking, but I'm going, it doesn't matter. When you're high, you can still think, you can still do stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Don't go drive. You can still join the guild when you're high. You can still donate to the PAC when you're high. You can make a difference when you're high.
But
right?
to those of you that are concerned about people being high and driving around, that's a valid concern.
Yep.
But take it from someone who smokes a lot. It's not the most inspiring. Like when we smoke, we generally like to hang out and be creative and talk, not necessarily get in our car and drive around.
Right.
That's more of a drunk thing to do.
Exactly.
So if you focus on the drunk drivers before you worry about the high drivers.
And if you want to go to Kalkushka and check out a lounge, we got you.
Because
we got a field trip coming up on September 21st.
Yeah.
SmokingSafari.com.
Go to the links down in the show notes. Landon, I appreciate you coming up. I appreciate the work you're doing. It's
Thanks
really cool.
Me,
it's crazy that there's things that this is highly illegal activity that we're talking about 3-4 years ago,
right?
And now there's a guild, and people, it's being normalized. It's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I appreciate you, and we'll definitely become members, and we'll see you at an event for sure.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.